We gonna talk like two normal folks, have fun, and learn.
Okay.
You gonna learn me some history.
All right. Sounds good.
So I'm sure I'm gonna ask you some questions that we talked about before, but give me a little bit about your background, what part of Chicago you from, and how you got into the legal field.
Well, I grew up in Inglewood,
Okay.
uh, and back then, Inglewood was the second largest business district in Chicago.
Mhm.
And I just found that out the last couple of years from a book that I read.
Okay.
The second largest behind downtown, behind the loop,
Hmm.
and there were like four uh, full service grocery stores, custom hat shop, wild game shop, four theaters. Everything. My childhood bank is still there. It's a
Oh,
U.S. bank
wow.
now. Then I think it was Chicago Bank and Trust. You had two 10-cent stores, which are now called dollar stores. That was Woolworth and Kresge's.
Okay.
And you had Walgreens, and Walgreens then had lunch counters where you could go in and actually have lunch.
Oh, really?
Yes,
Because I do remember Woolworth and I do remember Woolworth having lunch counters.
yeah. But that was the Inglewood that I grew up in,
Okay.
and I grew up on 61st and Racine,
Okay.
and the police station was right on the corner. It's still there. The Inglewood Police Station
Okay.
was right on the corner. There were two grocery stores on my block on opposite ends of the block. One was white owned and one was black owned.
Okay.
And next door to my home, there was a house with a big yard and flowers, and it was such that the schools would bring children there on field trips
Mm-hmm.
to see, all of the different flowers and the different fish swimming around in the pond.
Oh,
And
wow.
there were also gangs. I lived on the dividing line. There was one gang on the east side of Racine and another gang on the west side.
Okay.
And so people are surprised to hear, we're talking about in the late 50s, early 60s,
Okay.
that there were gangs even then.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, yeah. And
Yeah.
in fact, I just realized, you familiar with Dr. Albert Poussaint?
Yes, yes, indeed.
Yeah, he just passed a
Okay.
couple of weeks
Oh,
ago. He was 91. And he wrote a book in 1974 called Why Blacks Kill Blacks.
uh-huh.
1974. So
Yeah.
none of this is new.
No, no.
Yeah, and it's so unfortunate. It's
Yeah.
so unfortunate. Uh, I always, from high school, I wanted to be a writer,
Okay.
and my father wanted me to be a lawyer,
Mm.
and so that's how I ended up going to journalism school and getting a journalism degree, and actually becoming a journalist, and then going to later deciding to go to law school.
Okay.
And get my law degree. I've never practiced law, but having a law degree, it helps my writing in terms of having knowledge about the legal process, and it also encouraged my daughter Patrice to go to law school,
Hmm.
and she ended up graduating from DePaul, which is the same school I went to. So I was able
Okay.
to participate in the graduation as part of the legacy.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, and now she's also started to write, so it's
Mhm.
really kind of like I guess a
Okay.
uh, full circle moment. So through my years, I've been fortunate to. I think I mentioned to you some of the people that I've been fortunate enough to interview,
Hmm.
including Rosa Parks. I don't know if you
Yeah.
want me to go through that.
Yes, let's do it. Let's do it.
Okay, Rosa Parks, Quincy Jones, Smokey Robinson, Walter Cronkite, Jerry Butler, who just passed.
Right.
Um, there are a couple of more, but it'll come to me.
Okay.
And so those have have always been very enlightening experiences. And one thing that I've noted, all of the celebrities that I've met and interviewed have always been genuinely nice people.
Hmm.
I've never met one that was like, well, I'm Quincy Jones,
Right.
that type. All of them have been very gracious and generous with their time and their information.
Hmm.
I've my first job out of college was actually as a radio TV reporter
Okay.
for the CBS affiliate in Peoria, Channel 31.
Okay.
I was first brought in as an intern, and then after about when I graduated, they offered me a job, and so that was my first job in Peoria for the TV radio TV report.
Okay.
I
So
think
as an
uh,
internist for the reporter, the job down there, how are your hours? Like what type of duties and stuff?
I worked a regular shift, and it
Okay.
would change. Sometimes it was the morning shift, sometimes it was the evening shift. I don't recall ever working an overnight shift, but
Okay.
I worked a regular 8 hour shift, and I would go out with reporters with them, and then I would come back and help them write up the story. And it was very, very interesting, process. I remember one time, because at that time I was about 20, 21, and big natural. I had a big natural, and I wore an Army flak jacket. And so one time, I don't know if you remember the former Senator Howard Baker. He
Yeah.
ended up as a vice president with somebody, I don't remember
Yeah.
who, but he was from downstate Illinois. And so he was coming to town for some reason, and they sent me to interview him. And when I got there, they wouldn't let me in. And I later found out that they called back to the station to make sure that I was the reporter. And as I said, I dressed in. I had this huge natural. I was 21
Okay.
or so, and wore an Army flak jacket. And then after they verified that I was who I said I was, they let me in. I did the interview, and it aired.
Okay.
But those were some of the kind of experiences that I had. I also recall um, this was also during the time when H. Rap Brown and Angela Davis
Hmm.
were on the run.
Okay.
And so I wrote for one of my journalism classes. I wrote a satire. In fact, I thought it was satire. What if Rap Brown came to Peoria? And
Oh.
next thing I know, I'm sitting in the police chief's office with the dean of the journalism school asking me what do I know about Rap Brown coming to Peoria. I
Hmm.
said it was just satire. I said I don't know Rap Brown. I said it was just a satirical piece that I wrote, and so they kept me there for a little while to
Okay.
make sure that I didn't have any information on Rap Brown.
Right.
So those were in Peoria during those days, 1968 or so. Um, there was for blacks, we weren't treated very well. when I went to Bradley, I was part of the largest contingent of Black students who had ever come to the school. Most of us were from Chicago and New York. And so it was just a cultural experience for Peoria and a cultural experience for us. And there was at that time there was one Black doctor and there was one Black lawyer who later became a federal judge.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and there wasn't a whole lot, for us to do as far as from a cultural standpoint. So a lot of students, including myself, we went home most weekends.
Okay.
There was a train. I took the well, you could take the bus too, but I took the train most of the time home early Friday. I tried to arrange so I didn't have classes on Friday, so I could leave like late Thursday or early Friday, and then come back early Sunday.
Okay.
Yeah.
So during that time, you guys, even though I'm sure probably before your years there, there were a few Black people there, but you guys were mainly the ones that were integrating Peoria.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Especially cultural.
Mm-hmm.
And then, as I said, there was just so much going on, and it was new to them, and it was new to us.
Right.
And it was the first time most of us had ever been away from home
Correct.
for any extended period, and learning to live on our own. And it was just it was something.
Mm-hmm.
So I also participated in one of the last Black student takeovers.
Oh,
Yeah,
really?
one night we decided to take over the student center.
Mm-hmm.
Took over the student center, and we had a list of demands, some of which I think I wrote up, demanding there was only one Black tenured professor. We wanted more professors. We wanted we wanted some space of our own, and we were asking for a Black cultural center,
Okay.
which the media termed a Black clubhouse.
Mm.
And so so we took over the student center. They overreacted and called out the National Guard, I believe. And I think I was one of the last ones to come out. They made us pay for any damages that we had done before we could return to school.
Mm-hmm.
But it was quite interesting. The media, I think I said this, they referred to the cultural center as a clubhouse.
Okay.
So that put a whole, different, clubhouse. I mean, what are you doing in a
Yeah,
clubhouse
exactly.
versus
Exactly.
a cultural center?
Right.
So that was kind of, but I managed to go and graduate on time
Okay.
and stayed down and worked at the TV station for a couple of years, and then I just had to get back to Chicago.
Okay.
Peoria was too much of a cultural dissonance for me.
Yeah. So with that experience, did that put a blemish or anything on your file, your name, like with the government or anything like that?
I don't know if it did. I've never known about it,
Okay.
but I've always my group has always included a lot of activists.
Okay.
Who turned out to be activist lawyers, activist journalists, activist social workers,
Okay.
whatever. I mean, that was just the time.
Yeah.
I mean, either you were for Black Power or you
Or
were,
not. Or
yeah,
not. Yeah.
yeah. And so, in fact, there was a white student, I think he was Jewish, um, and he was an heir to either Goodyear. He was an heir to one of the big companies, and he used to always come and hang around with me.
Mm-hmm.
And I would tell him, and so one day he asked me, he said, Walter, why don't you want to be my friend? And I looked at him and I said, and he was a nice guy, but I just, it damaged my reputation to be hanging around with somebody white.
Right.
And I'm supposed to be, a student
Other
athlete.
people.
Yeah. And so I turned around. I actually told him, I said, you want to be my friend? He said, yeah. I said, go out and kill some white people. That's what I told him. And I never heard from him again.
Oh,
That was awful. I shouldn't have done that. But that's what I told him.
okay.
That's what I told him.
Wow.
But as I said, I just was not into white people at that time.
Gotcha. You think where we are now, because as we were talking earlier, um, with the changes of Inglewood and then what you guys had, the different stores and the community and stuff, do you think that integration has hurt us or helped?
I don't think we've ever really been uh, integrated. I
Mhm.
think we've been mixed in. Integration suggests that there's some that everybody has to want to be integrated.
Right.
Like one side can't just want to be integrated and the other side doesn't, and
Correct.
call it integration.
Hmm.
And so I think that we are at a place that we've been before. It's just much more what it's much darker or egregious. I'll say because um, I've said from the time when this whole new thing started, this is all about population control.
Yes, it is. Yes, it
It's
is.
all about population control, and Black people need to understand
Mm-hmm.
that. I just finished rereading "Faces at the Bottom of the Well"
Okay.
by Derek Bell, written in 1992, I think, and he talks about a critical race theory.
Mm-hmm.
He talks about that in that book in 1992.
Okay.
So I tell people this is nothing new. This is just all over again. And
Right.
critical
And
and most
framed
people don't.
differently.
Yeah, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But it's critical race theory is saying that racism is not just white people not liking Black people. It's built into the racism is built into the institution.
The DNA.
Yeah. And so if we don't understand that, then it's hard to fight it.
Yeah,
If you don't understand what you're fighting.
exactly.
That the white folks have messed up the air, the land, and the water and everything, and they're realizing that they're going to be in the minority, not just in the United States, but around different parts of the world
Oh yeah.
in the near future.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then when you tie in, people don't realize that Elon Musk, SpaceX, that's all about making it less expensive to go to outer space.
Correct.
So
Yeah.
my theory is that they want to get rid of all of us, and then they'll be able to leave
And
because the
started
Earth,
someplace else.
yeah, eventually won't be inhabitable.
Yes.
But the billionaires are gonna need an economic base, and that's gonna be the millionaire
Mm-hmm.
because all of us will be gone.
Correct. Correct. You're so
Yeah,
right.
so that's kind of my rough theory,
Okay.
about what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that just we as a people just have to start waking up and doing what we can do. I don't think you need to just worry about it every day, but every day you need to be thinking about what can we do
Right.
individually as a family and also as a people
Correct.
to come out on the other end of it.
No, you You make a lot of good points that a couple of my colleagues and friends have been talking about for the last several weeks because, um, like you said, it's about people control and how can we manage this and also in certain aspects monetize it differently because America's always been about capitalism for the most part. That's
Sure.
not going to change. But
Right.
they're looking at it always from the perspective of the haves and the have-nots,
Exactly.
and how it's so much deeper than, you know, folks thinking it's just about race or just about this. No, it's never been about that. It's never.
Right.
That's just a cover. But you make some really, really good points. And I kind of want to situate the conversation and direct it. We're gonna have several more conversations because you have
Sure.
a wealth
Sure.
of knowledge, but taking it to the creative art side, the artists and
Sure.
different folks that you've interviewed, like Quincy Jones and Jerry Butler, who are staples in Chicago, but a lot of people don't know the history of Chicago's music. They think that it's either
Exactly. Yeah.
LA or New York, but Chicago laid some foundations for a lot of stuff. So
That's
when
right.
you interviewed these people, and the fact that you mentioned that they stayed humble and they were just like regular day people, what was that knowing about the how music changed, particularly within your time and the activism that was in music? What did the interviewing some of those people and knowing the amazing feats that they did, what did that do for you?
Well, it made me feel very good. It really made me feel honored when I sat down to interview Smokey Robinson. I violated one of my teaching rules.
Okay.
When I taught, I always told my students, don't put the people that you're interviewing on a pedestal,
Okay.
because you're there to do a job. You're there to get certain information, and if you're interviewing them from the standpoint of being an idol, them being an idol, you're not going to get the information that you need, and you're not going to ask the questions that you need to ask. So, having said that, when I interviewed Smokey, the first thing I told him, I said, "Look, I have to get this out of the way." I said, "I've been a fan. I'm a huge fan of you and the whole Motown sound.
Right.
I mean, that's the sound that I grew up with,
Hmm.
and I'm a huge fan." And I told him, I said, "I just had to get that out of the way before I could really sit down and do a serious interview with you,
Yeah,
because I don't want to waste your time."
correct.
And he just kind of laughed and said, "Well, I understand."
Hmm.
But the music, not just Motown, but I listen to a lot of hip hop and gangster rap.
Hmm.
And I started out listening to it because I knew my daughters were getting to an age where they were going to be listening to it and talking about it. And
Right.
I wanted to be in a position where I could have an intelligent conversation with it.
Okay.
So I started listening to it and determined and realized that I liked a
Yeah.
lot of it. And the first album that I bought was I bought Snoop Dogg and Dr. Dre's, the first album that they did together. And I
Okay.
don't know why the title is escaping me, but it was about cannabis. And I realized, wow, I like this. But later I realized the reason I liked it was because it was James Brown, it was George Clinton. I could hear all of that in the music. I could
The
hear
chronic.
blues,
The
I could
chronic.
hear
That's what it was.
jazz, and then I just started liking hip hop and the so-called gangster rap.
Okay.
And one of my favorite songs, I don't know if you've heard it before, is "Regulate."
Yes. Oh,
Warren
yes.
G
Nate
and
Dogg.
Nate Dogg. Yeah, I
Yes.
love that song. I love that
Yes.
song. And
Yes. Yes.
I like Outkast,
Okay.
Liberation. They have a
Mhm.
song called Liberation,
Yeah.
which is a great song. And so, but I can hear all of the history
Hmm.
in that music, and the rappers acknowledge the history by sampling
Yeah.
and by talking about the artists that have had influences on them and their music.
Yeah.
And so and so I listen to all kind of music. And then I grew up in a musical household. My mother played the piano at her church, and but then I also and my godmother sang, and I just realized a couple of years ago that they also did classical music because I found some of her music in the bench of her piano. And so they weren't just doing gospel music, they also did classical music.
Okay.
And then my father got his violin here. He, my father was born in 1907.
Oh,
He
wow.
self-taught himself how to play the violin. And I know he could play because I would hear him play when I was growing up. And we were trying to figure out, well, where would somebody, a black kid, go to learn how to play the violin
At that
uh,
time.
at that time? And
Yeah.
we figured out he must have self-taught.
Yeah.
And I've got his violin here, and I'm going to eventually give it to my grandson
Okay.
because he plays the violin.
That's amazing.
Yeah, and then I have an older brother who played the bass, the stand-up bass.
Okay.
Uh, I took clarinet lessons back in the day. I wanted to play drums, but my mother wouldn't let me.
They was too
And
loud.
playing the clarinet. And Patrice, I don't know if she's mentioned this, she was in Marion Catholic High School marching band.
Okay. That
Marion has won the state championship. She was on it one year when they won the state championship.
amazing. I
Yeah,
gotta
she
talk to
played.
her.
Yeah, she played the flute.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mm.
So we come. I come from a music based family. I've got a cousin who was a music teacher at one of the high schools in Chicago. I can't think of which one. And then I've got another cousin who played in the Red Saunders band
Mm.
at the Regal Theater,
Okay.
and also played in Ben Branch's band at Operation Push.
Okay.
Yeah, and so I've got yeah, as I said, I have a real musical history.
So when you interviewed, so actually, so yesterday I spoke to a gentleman and he was more of a gospel historian and he was originally connected to Mount Pisgah. He was talking about Roberta Martin and Thomas Dorsey and James Cleveland and stuff and making the connections to the Chicago sound. And
Mm-hmm.
so when you were talking about and interviewing Smokey Robinson, prior to him coming, well, doing Motown, um, with the Chicago history, we had VJ Records and stuff, which was down.
Right.
Uh,
Mm-hmm.
do any of them, I don't know if they knew about it or know about it, but did any of them, because I believe that VJ Records was the blueprint for the most part for Motown because it was black owned and they had a publishing company connected to it. They did their records and all of that. Did Smokey Robinson or any of them, the folks that you talked to, did they make the connection to Chicago as being the staple before the Motown sound?
No, no, I can't say. Well, as you said, Quincy was from
Right.
Chicago,
Mhm.
but Smokey, I don't recall us talking about that. And I've done a lot of reading about Motown and Barry Gordy and whatnot. And I've never seen anything where they talk about a Chicago
Okay.
connection or influence. And I kind of think Motown just kind of grew out of I think it was the Brewster Projects
Hmm.
in Detroit, where a lot of the singers live.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so there may have been a connection. I don't know.
Okay.
But one of my things about the Chicago sound is that it has influenced a lot of people
It
who
has.
may not know that they've been influenced by it
Yeah. Yeah.
because it's such an eclectic type of sound. There's no one thing that you can say
No. No.
Chicago sound of music,
Yeah.
and that's what makes it so powerful.
Yeah. And that, yeah, because even in my digging and coming across different things about the Chicago sound and even talking to some of the musicians as opposed to the singers and just their representation, they were like, Chicago had a good mixture of the big bang sound, the horn section, everything that was happening because it like had a feel for the folks that were coming up from the South during the Great Migration, and they were bringing their experiences from down there and stuff like that. And Chicago just put it all together for their sound. So yeah, seriously, because I even think about Earth, Wind, and Fire and
Oh
how,
yeah,
oh my God, and Maurice White and him being from Chicago and his
yeah.
brother, and they made that sound, then taking it to the West Coast and doing what they did out there. So yes, Chicago has a sound.
And Earth, Wind, and Fire. I use them as an example of their sound is all over the place. They
Yes,
do it all. If you really
yes,
listen to their music,
they do.
it's all in there.
They
Yeah,
do.
they great. Yeah.
Yeah. So I want to, keep it short because we're gonna have a couple of more of these conversations because I
Okay.
want
Sure.
to hear some more things. But I thank you so much for your time
Oh no, that's
and
I'm
being able
glad
to
to participate.
share this history because it's needed and it's we certainly have to pass this along to our young folks. And just me doing this process with digging deep into Chicago's history, I've learned a lot and gained more knowledge. But I want to hear more about just Inglewood and how it was back in the day and stuff. So we're gonna do this again.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, I love Inglewood. I drive back periodically and just drive through where I used to live.
Hmm.
It's a parking lot now
Oh
for the
wow.
police station. Yeah. Yeah,
Oh.
they the city took my parents' house by eminent domain so they could expand their parking lot.
Hmm. Yeah,
And
that's another
so
conversation we gonna have.
yeah, yeah, so the parking lot is still there.
Okay, gotcha. But Walter, it was such a pleasure. I appreciate you so much.
I appreciate you. And these memories bring, it makes me feel good.
Yeah,
It's a positive feeling, and that's something that we need with all this stuff that's going on.
indeed,
Yeah, so
indeed.
I enjoy it.
All right, Will. So I will send another email and we'll schedule another time to do this again.
Okay, sounds good.
All right,
Now,
take
are
care.
you